Welcome to the Armed and Ready podcast. I am your host, Jason Wood, the VA loan guy. We have a really exciting episode lined up for you, so come check it out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Armed and Ready podcast. I am your host, Jason Wood. Today we have Navy veteran Russ Hoover with us, and he's going to talk to us about his 26 years in the Navy and the current business that he owns, veteran-owned business right now out in Florida. So, Russ, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
Yeah, so full disclosure, Russ's daughter works for me on my team, and she is an absolute rock star. We're super blessed to have her as part of the team. She's great, really hard worker. So you cracked the whip on her good when she was young.
My time in the Navy rubbed off well on her.
Yeah. But she does a great job for us in all seriousness. So Russ, you joined the Navy, you were in for 26 years. So tell us, as a young guy, what was the thing tugging at your heart to make that move?
A couple things. So I joined in 1991. The first Persian Gulf War was rocking and rolling, of course, at that time. So it's a little bit of patriotism there, obviously, in that regard. I think I always knew I wanted to be in the military, more so because coming out of school, I didn't really have that focus as far as what I wanted to do. I want to go off to college and be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it was going to be. I just didn't have that yet. I knew I wanted to see a little bit of the world, and the Navy obviously gave me an opportunity to do so. I was about to become a father, so I knew I wanted something stable as well. I just found it checked all the blocks. That's about the best way to put it there. And that's why I always try and tell people is it's one of those jobs where job security is a big thing. You don't realize it until you need it to be a big thing in that regard. Yeah. So that was the big driver for me. And then once I got in, it was just, I loved it. I loved it so much.
So what did you do when you're in? What was your job?
So I came in as a machine repairman, MR. Machine repairman, we're a machinist. Our job is to repair and fabricate parts. Okay. Is the assignment, but I was sent to a repair division on most ships is also firefighting division. So I was a firefighter that fixed stuff, or a guy that fixed stuff and fought fires, kind of depend on the day in that regard. I spent most of my career in that field. Did a couple tours off to go recruiting as well, but spent most of it either in damage control and repair.
Nice. So did you get to see much of the world while you were in?
Oh my goodness. I got to see all the world. I think I joined at the perfect time. So when I came in 91, the Navy had a class of ship called tenders. They're all gone now. There's a couple of reserve ones, but there was 16 of them. Tenders would roam they'd park one somewhere in the world and we'd fix ships. So my first deployment was straight to the Persian Gulf. I parked in Jebel Ali.
Oh, wow.
Time was, there was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing in Jebel Ali when I got there in 1990, the beginning of 92. That was my first experience going overseas. But the reason I think it was a much better time then, as an MR, every ship in the Navy has to have at least one MR aboard, and bigger ships will have several in that regard. But it was real common for a ship to an MR get sick or couldn't make a deployment. So they'd call over and say, hey, do you have a guy that wants to take off? So I would jump ship constantly to other platforms. And it allowed me to actually, I spent over 20 years on sea duty.
Oh, wow.
And during that time frame, I did 2 tenders, 4 cruisers, 7 destroyers, an aircraft carrier, and 2 frigates I spent time aboard. Anywhere from just 1 or 2 months up to years at a time. So I got to see everywhere. It's usually easier to say where I didn't get to go.
Yeah. Sounds like it. What was one of your favorite places that you got to visit?
One of my favorite places has always been Hong Kong. It was always that when you think of a foreign port, it kind of hit all of it. You get to see a lot. You get to, especially in the early parts before the British gave up control of Hong Kong. Back then it was real, you could pull in the port and you'd see all the other navies there at the same time, including the Russians. I'll never forget that. One of the weirdest things I remember about the early years in my career, when we pulled into Hong Kong, the Russian, their money was still worthless throughout most of the world. So the pawn shops, they'd sell stuff at the pawn shops in Hong Kong to get money to spend when they were on liberty. And that's always been that, for some reason, that first pawn shop I ever went to has always been in my head every time I go back there. But it's, that was just one of those kind of things. And then, of course, you just get to see everywhere for different reasons. Parts of the world That's probably the only thing I ever really regretted about my tour. I wish I'd done more family tours overseas. I mean, I got to go overseas, but I wish I'd taken my family with me more to give them that chance to be exposed to like Japan and things like that.
Yeah, all those different cultures and stuff.
Exactly. It's real easy to get jaded by the freedom of America. That most people don't realize that the rest of the world doesn't have this.
Yeah.
Like it most of the time.
Yeah. Tell us any good stories you remember from when you were serving?
Coolest things are we were watching Survivor the other day. Total coincidence. We were in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, when the very first episode of Survivor was being filmed, and nobody even heard of it yet. So we're at a resort, and that's where they would take them after they got voted off the island or whatever they used to call it back then. And that's where they were holding them at until everything was wrapped up from filming. So one day we're at breakfast in the restaurant there at our resort, and we're talking to the first people that got kicked off of Survivor. And I'll never forget, they were trying to explain to us what the show was, and I'm like, that sounds dumb. I mean, it's funny because all these years later, they wrap up season 30 or 28 or whatever it was in that regard. And
yeah, it's been a hit.
Yeah, it's just it's weird all the time that man, we met those people at the time. It was like, yeah, whatever, that show's not going anywhere. And now we get to see it all the time. And it's kind of funny.
That's really cool.
I wish I'd have known back then. We'd have gotten an autograph or at least a couple pictures or something.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, hindsight's perfect vision. So in the Gulf War, were you in any combat situations or anything when you're there?
No and yes. Not direct combat most of the time. We do support. I'd fix the ships as they come out. For me, one of the first ships I got sent over to though was CG-29, the USS Jewett. I'll never forget that. And then a couple other ones along those lines. We do the body recoveries and such though. You can still see where in the beginning of the war, when they were attacking like the oil platforms and things along those lines, we still have to help recover. We call them freedom of navigation hazards. So like a boat or something that had been partially sank, but was still floating along. You've either got to destroy it, sink it all the way, or get it completely out of the water in those regards. And then as time moved on, I got switched over. I did what we call it VBSS, Visit Board Search and Siege. In 91, they passed a resolution that Saddam and they couldn't export oil anymore. So our job was to search vessels and try and find that. And that was about as, at least at that time, that was about as close to combat as I should be happy to say. I mean, of course, as a kid, you're like, I want to get in the war. I want to be there. And until you see that first taste of it and you realize that it's not a video game.
Right.
It's not a video game, but it was good. It was nice to have that chance to do your part to defend the world, your country.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of good training.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like Coast Guard duty, sort of.
Oh yeah, no, we actually did a lot of they call them Leo debts. So we'll get a Coast Guard team that would come in with us because they teach you. They're actually law enforcement. They have the ability to make an arrest and things along those lines. Whereas on the Navy side, we don't really do that. So they teach it. Yeah, they've gotten a lot better in the years since obviously 91.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's all progressed. So, 26 years in the Navy. What was your thought process on leaving the military? Was it, you just knew it was time, or, what was really pushing you to transition into the civilian world?
I'd say a lot of things. I was fortunate enough to have really good leadership at certain points in my career that really pushed me towards education, that had pushed me towards being prepared for the next step, even early on, even. After my first enlistment, I had an opportunity to go to college, and I almost turned it down. I was like an idiot. I was like, I'm not going to do that. At the time, I'd just taken orders to go to Special Boat Unit 12, and literally the day before, I got my orders to go to jump school and all that stuff. So in my head, I'm gonna go jump out of planes. But my boss, when I got selected for the program, goes, no, you're going to college. Don't be stupid. Someday this is going to end, and what are the odds that somebody in the civilian world is going to want to pay you to, jump out of planes with boats? You go get a degree. So I started preparing unknowingly early on in that regard. So as I got closer to retirement, I didn't make chief until right at 20. My rate's incredibly small in the Navy. There's only about 650 MRs in the entire Navy now. So advancement was miserable for a long time. Ended up picking up, so I knew I was going to stay for 24. And then the same thing repeated. As I was a chief, there was 0 billets for senior. There was only 5 senior chiefs and then 3 master chiefs in the entire Navy. So the odds of that making advance were in the toilet, unfortunately, in that regard. Same thing. I had really good leadership saying, you need to be thinking about the next step. What are you going to do after this is over? I got lucky and made senior chief, but I got even luckier that I started making those preparations ahead of time, started thinking about like, what do I want to do next? How do I get there? What resources are available to me? Early on in my career, I got to see a lot of guys that were literally like the day of their last day in the Navy. It's like, hey, you're not coming here tomorrow. What are you going to do? You know, and they're like, what do you mean? Like you're out of the Navy tomorrow. What are you going to do next? And that wasn't uncommon to see guys who'd be like, I don't know. Like it never occurred to them that they just couldn't put on their uniform and come to work. So I didn't want to be one of those guys that was just, what, it's over. What do I do now? And because then it always turns into that problem where they either stay where they're at when they retire, they go back home where they came from. And then there's that small percentage that kind of had a plan in place. So I knew I wanted to be that guy that had a plan in place. So I started making preparations ahead of time as far as education, paying attention to what I wanted to do next. I was very lucky. Well, I think we all are in the military. You get a ton of training, especially if you try to get some more training. And the hardest part for, I think, a lot of people is realizing, like, what skills do I have? How are those skills going to translate, into the civilian world?
Yeah.
They get so stuck on their title in the military that they forget that translates into whole other little titles. Sometimes not even things that you even consider. I mean, to come out of this complete left field, you're like, why would you want me for that job? And it's like, oh yeah, I guess I kind of do that now. It never even occurred to me,
Right.
So I started making preps for that. I made senior chief out of the blue, which was a total surprise, and which gave me 2 more years. I was actually going to go back to sea again. And luckily I had a good master chief who was like, no, you're not going back to sea. You're going to go to shore duty, and you're going to spend those 2 years getting ready to get out of the Navy. You don't want to be the guy that literally walks off a ship and is a civilian and has to come up with a plan that day.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Oh, it was the best advice. I honestly probably owe him part of my paycheck. I'm sure Tim's going to give me a call and tell me that too.
Yeah. The phone's going to be ringing here in a half hour. Well, so when you transitioned, did you transition into what you're doing now?
No, I did not. So when just as I was retiring, I was at Swarmic San Diego. I ran their machine product family. I was a DLCPO there. Just maybe 6 months prior to my retirement, the Navy was putting in a new initiative on 3D printing, additive manufacturing, things like that. And as total coincidence, I was my command subject matter expert, and they hired me straight out. Technically, I canceled my terminal leave to finish up the Navy side of that program, and literally took off my uniform on Friday and showed back up to the same office, same building, everything on Monday as a contractor, government contractor. I think a lot of guys do that. I mean, obviously it's a direct fit. I can't say anything really bad about it. The only hard part for me, it was tough to be still there doing everything, but not be in the Navy anymore, not quote unquote be senior chief Hoover anymore. The weird part was everybody still called me senior chief. I literally grew facial hair. So I was always trying to convince people I was not in the Navy anymore. They just thought I was out of uniform that day. I'm like, no, I'm retired. I'm really not in the Navy anymore. So I did that for a year. I got in a new boss. I just did not like the guy at all. I could not figure out what the problem was between us. We were doing great things, but for whatever reason, we just could not mesh. And I'm in a meeting one day, and I thought I was thinking in my head, but I actually said it out loud. I don't need to be here. I can quit whenever I want. But I'd said it out loud. Somebody's like, what was that? I was like, well, I quit. I'm not happy doing this no more, and I'm not going to do it. So I'm rolling out. And that was it. That was literally, I gave my 2 weeks notice, and, did my best until the last day. And that was it. I retired, went back to school for almost a year.
Okay.
I had my GI benefits, of course.
Yeah.
I took a minute, really paid attention to what I could do. And I went back to school, started working on a business degree for internet sales. I knew I wanted to do what I do now. I just didn't know when that was going to happen. I knew most of it was going to be like internet-based kind of stuff.
Right.
So I wanted to learn more about So my very first ship, there was literally one computer in my entire division. That's how,
Oh, wow.
and of course, computers have come a long way since then, but I don't know that I've necessarily kept pace with it. I'm sure if my daughter could hear that, she'd be laughing in the background because every time I get a phone, she's the first person I call to fix it for me. But now I'm really good with them, which is good. And then I was waiting for my wife to retire. My wife retired 2 years after me.
Oh, okay.
We knew we weren't going to stay in California. I wanted so I didn't really want to. I didn't want to commit to somebody, and be like, hey, I'm going to be out here in a year. That's if the military taught me anything. It's loyalty is everything. You've got to stand by your commitments. Your word is your bond. So I took that time for school. And then when my wife retired, we knew we were going to leave California. We weren't sure where. We looked at several places. We were going to come out to Florida. My wife had been stationed here twice. We saw the benefits from, taxes and all kinds of other good stuff in that regard, cost of living. We flew out here to check out Florida real quick on a kind of a little mini vacation. My business partner, Will, he was stationed here at Patrick Air Force Base. And he's like, hey, if you come out this way, because me and him, I've always been a hobby woodworker out of my garage and done some work in that regard. And he's like, hey, if you're going to move out to Florida, he was doing the same thing at his garage. We could, let's actually open a shop. Let's give it a shot, So I like, hey, that sounds great. It worked out in the cards and moved out to Florida. And we got our first shop was a little 1,300 square feet. Nice. But we could afford it. We didn't bite off more than we could chew. That's what I always tell people, if you're going to do something, commit to it, but don't, get in over your head.
Yeah.
So we knew that, if it failed miserably, at least I could still, find a way to pay for it kind of thing. And I'm happy to say it's done really great though.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about what is your business? What's the name of it? What do you guys do?
Okay. So I'm Sailor Made Custom Woodworks. We primarily work with the military, police, first responders. We make shadow boxes is our primary business. I think obviously we're one of the best. We get a lot of work for it, that's for sure. But we don't just do military. I mean, military, of course, we have a strong Navy following, strong military following across the board. But I mean, we've also done shadow boxes for teachers. We did a chef. I mean, we police, fire departments across the board. So we do custom 3D wood carved shadow boxes was about the best way to put it. We use solid mahogany, and then we take input from the customer as far as like, hey, what do you want? And the hardest part in the beginning for us with people was don't think square box, the traditional shadow box. If you could have anything, what would it be? And then we take that information, we put it through a 3D rendering process. We work out the details back and forth. Hey, I like this, I don't like that kind of thing. How big do you need it to be as far as what all you're going to put in it? We've done as small as 1 or 2 foot all the way up to, I think our biggest shadow box right now is almost 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide.
Wow.
We've done everything. I've done everything from traditional, square box all the way through, the rank devices or warfare devices, up through superheroes. I mean, if you can think of it, we've made it, and some of them are. I mean, some of our craziest ones are still waiting to come out. We've got 2 now that we never post something we've made until it's been presented to the person, and then still only with their permission. I'd say about 50% of what we do is like your wife or your husband ordered it for the retiring person or a family member. So they may not have any clue what it's going to be. So the last thing I want to do is put it on, Instagram or Facebook ahead of time.
Right.
About 95% of what we do is mostly internet. We do worldwide. This morning we had to race over to the post office and send something off to Spain for retirement.
Oh, cool.
A small portion, Patrick Air Force Base is the closest. Well, correction, Patrick Space Force Base is the closest military installation to us there. So it's nice in that regard. I like it a lot.
That's
cool.
I
love what I do. It's I'm real fortunate in that regard.
Nice. Yeah, I see the Hulk in the background there.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's 4 feet tall, has Bluetooth speakers and lights.
That's great.
He can almost stand by himself. We've done other ones though with like working propellers on the planes. We did a almost 6 foot long Chinook helicopter. One of our guys that retired is a master sergeant in the Army. He was a Chinook captain, and so for his retirement, we made him a Chinook helicopter.
How cool!
Well, it's huge. It's huge, but That's what people like. So that's what we make. We do it really good.
That's really cool. Now, how long have you been in business?
So my partner, technically the name itself has been in business for 5 years, but me and him have been partners for almost 3 years now.
Okay.
We like it a lot. We primarily deal with military, but not it's not like, hey, we don't like anybody else. It's just shadow boxes are a lot more familiar to a military and fire departments, police departments in that regard. The thing I like a lot is we've had that opportunity to introduce it to a whole new group of people that well, I'd like to actually, I want to change that a little bit to a group of people who might want a shadow box, but more importantly, we've had that opportunity to educate people what a shadow box is. It's not just some pretty thing on a wall. That means something to somebody. That's a representation of their commitment to their, to themselves, to their conscience, to their family. The contents in that are, it's not just something that looks pretty. I mean, that's, some of those they're medals, that they've earned for getting injured or fighting for our freedom and such. So I like that we've had that opportunity to bring that to people that didn't realize that ahead of time. That actually means a lot to us. Almost everybody here is either were or are currently in the military, or a spouse or a dependent in some way, shape, or form. Once again, it's not a requirement or a necessity. It's just it's kind of a fit. I mean, who better than another military member to help you get your stuff ready to rock and roll, or their spouse or their dependents. They've been around it. They understand it. It helps a lot.
Yeah, a lot of familiarity there. So you guys have grown it from the two of you to, what are you guys at now for size of your business?
Strong right now, and we would grow even bigger and faster if we could. It's so when we first started our first shop, we were doing 1-2 shadow boxes a week. So we were doing, that 6 to maybe 10 in a month. COVID hit. At first, I didn't know what we were going to, everything shut down. Luckily enough, we were a 2-man shop at the time. My partner was still active duty, so there wasn't like we had any foot traffic. So shutdown for us wasn't that big of a deal. It just meant that if somebody did come to the door, we talked to them through the glass, but that wasn't what we did primarily.
Right.
About 3 to 6 months into COVID, though, was when it hit us a little bit. Suddenly, all those shadow boxes we were making, they couldn't retire. I still remember the first person that called and said they canceled they completely canceled his retirement, and they forced extending it for 2 years. It was an HM, an IDC who worked at one of the brigs, and the Navy stepped in and said, no, we need medical personnel. You can't transfer, you can't leave, you can't retire. Congratulations. And we held his shadow box in our office here for, I think it was almost 11 months before we were finally able to hey, put it, because the holdup was we didn't have dates, because we laser engraved his dates on there for him, but he didn't know when he was going to retire. And it was funny because in the meantime, his wife also contacted us to do her shadow box, so she was retiring as well. So it was kind of by the time it was ready to deliver it to him, they actually flew down here and picked it up in person, and we talked almost weekly for 11 months about his shadow box. It was kind of nice in that regard. But it didn't hurt our business too much. And then as soon as things let up a little bit, it's like somebody turned the lights on. And before we knew it, I mean, to the point now, today, we've already 1, 2, 3 more shadow box orders today. And we're booked out we're all the way out into March right now, would be the earliest I could get a shadow box for most people.
Wow.
That's crazy. As soon as, unfortunately, where I'm at on the Space Coast, as they like to call it out here, they launch a rocket about once a week out this way. So commercial real estate has gone just absolutely insane. Everybody's either trying to, I mean, if it has anything to do with space, it's headquartered here now. I mean, everything, you name it. There's so many companies out this way, but they're buying up all the commercial real estate. We can't find a new space to expand to. And then the next part would be, it's a little hard. People still aren't moving around necessarily as much, so it's hard to find employees at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, retirees, we get contacted by a few that their retirement got held up. So hopefully we'll see them soon and be out here to work with the guys at Sailor May. Would be great in that regard. We certainly look forward to it.
Yeah. What would you say has been, kind of the run up in business since, over the last 2 years? Obviously, you guys have grown quite a bit. What do you see as kind of the reason behind that growth?
Several things. One, I'd tell anybody in any kind of business, you've got to put quality in what you do. There's just no way around it there. The worst thing you can do is put out bad quality, get a bad name. That'll destroy anything that you do from that point on. So that's the first part. One of our things here is we're not going to send anything out of here that's not good enough to go on my own wall. Now, it might not be my taste per se. You know, the whole isn't necessarily what I want for my shadow box, but the quality's there, the workmanship is there. So that's the first part. And along with that, I think with so many people being home on the internet and such, it just got a little bit unintentionally. We benefited from that. People on the internet looking around at stuff, they found us, and as soon as that one person finds it, doubles and doubles and doubles and keeps going from there. We've got a lot of fans between Instagram and Facebook and such. A lot of people now that just that weekly are going through our stuff, like, hey, what'd you put? What would you make? Looking for something new in that regard. So that's really been pushed it harder, but it's just blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. I tell if you're thinking about retiring, you're not sure what you're going to do. There's a saying about networking. We have one of the best jobs in the world for networking. Most people call me, they're like, hey, company XYZ. If somebody calls and say, hey, Russ, I need a shadow box. I mean, they call and they talk to me by name because I either serve with them or they're friends with somebody that we've served with. I'd say easily 70% of the people that buy from us at some point or another had served with either me or my partner Will somewhere in the world in that regard. Yeah. So that pays off well. So don't discount that at all.
Well, yeah, there's that cliche saying though that your network is your net worth, right?
100% is 100% is.
Yeah. I think, for being a military person, social media in that regard has really helped us because, like when you joined and when I joined, there was no social media. So, keeping in touch with people is like, hopefully they keep the same cell phone number the next decade. Right. But fast forward to today with the social media and stuff, it's really easy to stay connected with folks that you serve with or went to basic training with, or you're in a school with, or something like that. And yeah, just maintain those relationships. You never know where they're going to lead.
I think for me and my partner, we unintentionally, and very intentionally, I said that backward. I found my way to it. A chief petty officer for the Navy. Everything we do is about not necessarily networking the way that people think. As a chief, if I call another chief and say, hey, brother, I need some help. We are bound by that. We are bound by that. That's the worst thing I could ever do is like, I got no time for you. That's the mess as a whole would tear me apart for that. And we carry that attitude over into retirement still. It's still real common for me to get was it 2 years ago? Maybe 2 years ago. Unfortunately, here in Pensacola, we had a shooting over at the air station. They lost, was it 3 personnel, I think, together. But one of the young men that passed away there, we got contacted by them and asked if we could do the shadow box that they presented to his family. And then they subsequently ordered a second one to get to the Naval Academy because he was a Naval Academy graduate as well.
Okay.
But that was a hard phone call. They have somebody call you up and say, hey, we need it really fast. It's for a sailor that's passed away. Can you help us out? But it wasn't one of those like, hey, company XYZ, can you help me out? It was somebody calling, hey, Russ, like, hey, Will, we need your help with this, brother. So it's things like that it means a lot to me. Obviously, I'm still connected to the military in that regard, that people still know that, hey, I'll still get that call just as a chief. Hey, we had a sailor got stuck at the airport. It was his connecting flight was coming through Orlando, trying to get to Jacksonville. And a chief I'd served with years ago, hey, Russ, hey, don't you live up that way somewhere? He goes, yeah, one of my sailors got stuck in Orlando. The flights are canceled. We can't get him here. Can you help us out? And I literally left work, got in my truck, drove to the airport, picked this kid up and drove him down to Jacksonville to Jacksonville Air Station and got him.
That's awesome.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, it's great that we have that opportunity, as a force, as a group, we're part of the biggest family in the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, amen to that. I mean, absolutely. That support is, undying, really. I mean, all you got to do is ask, and the help is there.
Yeah, that's a key part. A lot of people forget that just got to ask. But if you don't ask, they don't know, brother.
Exactly. Well, Russ, I got to thank you, man, for carving out some time. I know you're busy, and it was kind of last minute ask for you to be on the show today. So really appreciate you being on there. What's your website so we can send people there and they can find you?
Oh yeah, so you can either go Instagram, Facebook, and if you type in SailorMade CWW or just SailorMade, we're almost always the first thing that's going to pop up in that regard. We're everywhere. You can find it obviously at www.sailormade.com. Will show up. Facebook, Instagram, everything across the board in that regard. And then just take a look. Just take a look. That's all I always tell people. If nothing else, get some great ideas for when your time comes. The last thing I always tell everybody, regardless of me, or there's a lot of the companies out there that do some form of retirement gifts. Don't wait till the last second, and I mean that. Anything of quality takes at least some time to make. It's always hard when somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I retired a month. Can you make my shadow box?" And I'm like, I'm booked for like 4 months. I could clone myself, we'd be on track, but
Yeah. Well, you kind of know when you're going to retire, so plan ahead. Usually, yeah. Awesome. Well, Russ, thanks again, man. We'll post up a link to your site on my website as well, valoanguy.us, so people can get in touch with you there. And once again, man, we appreciate all you do, your service, and thanks again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.
You too. Bye. Thanks so much for checking out this week's episode. Please subscribe, click the link below, share with your friends. And hey, if you know a military person or a veteran with a great story to share, we would love to highlight them on the podcast and get their story out to everybody. Thanks so much.